He expertly stripped the bullets apart and collected all the gunpowder. By adjusting the weight of each round, he fashioned them into simple pressure-triggered land mines. He dug a trench outside the perimeter, lined it with waterproof sheeting, and filled it with pure gasoline. The detonator was placed right in the middle of the only path through. Then he laid sod on top and covered every trace. With so many traps set, he had to map them all out, or risk walking into his own ambush. He hammered nails through planks and hung them above the tunnel entrance. He sharpened rebar into spikes and laid them under the attic floor. Even a double-barrel shotgun got sawed down and positioned wherever the enemy was most likely to pass. Finally, he whittled several sharpened stakes and rigged them into a self-triggering spring trap. But traps alone only work if you wait. For a head-on fight, he needed firepower. A compound bow that had been sitting in the shed for decades was now set to full draw weight. And then there were the real jaw-droppers, an anti-personnel mine and a block of C4 he dug up from God knows where. All of it set to cut off every possible escape route. From cold steel to heavy ordnance, Rambo put everything he had on the table. All to make sure the people who had this coming would walk in and never walk out. And the one who backed this old man into a corner was the very girl he'd raised with his own hands. Rambo had never married, never had kids of his own. He didn't take in Gabriella until he was nearly 60. But on her 18th birthday, she told him she'd found her biological father. Rambo knew the man was no good, but he loved her too much to say no.
You can't just protect me forever.
As long as I'm around, he's never gonna hurt you again. No one is.
It was a father's promise, and the biggest thing he could offer her, but Gabriella never could have imagined that the father she'd spent so long searching for was an absolute piece of trash.
Just now, you looked just like your mother.
I'm just trying to understand why you would just go like that.
Because one day, I looked at your mother and you, and realized you both didn't mean anything to me anymore. I know it's hard to understand, but I wasted time being with you and her, and she fucking dies and leaves me with you, who I never wanted.
Manuel's cold, cutting words hit like a knife, shredding every fantasy she'd built up inside. He slammed the door in her face, and she just stood there, unable to move, unable to process the devastation. She ran out of the apartment in tears, ready to drive straight home. But Geisel convinced her it was too dangerous to drive at night, better to go unwind at a bar first. What Gabriella didn't know was that she was walking straight into a trap her best friend had set. Geisel had been working with a trafficking ring the whole time, all for money. Before long, Gabriella was drugged and taken, dragged into the darkest place imaginable. She ended up in an underground operation, controlled by drugs, subjected to horrors no one should ever face. Back on the ranch, Rambo had no idea any of this had happened.
John!
What's the matter?
She never went to Antonia's. She went to Mexico.
What?
She said, "Call. Gabriela went to see her father and never came back.
Get an address?
And her father's too."
Rambo was consumed by rage. Looks like this foster father was finally going to settle the score with that biological one. Rambo crossed the Mexican border alone and tracked down Manuel. But the man didn't even care that his own daughter was in danger. Rambo could also tell he genuinely didn't know where she was. So he turned to Geisel instead. Geisel claimed they'd both gone to the bar together, that she blacked out from drinking, and remembered nothing after that. But Rambo saw right through it. And then he noticed something. Geisel was wearing Gabriella's bracelet.
Give it to me, man.
It was her mother's. She'd never give it to you. You sold her out.
With sharp eyes and sheer intimidation, Rambo broke her in no time. Gabriella had been sold to a trafficking cartel. He took Geisel to the bar, had her point out the man who drugged Gabriella that night, and followed him to his car. The guy had barely relaxed when a blade pressed against him from behind.
¿Dónde está?
Yo no conozco esa pinche morra, cabrón.
Rambo gave him one clean cut, then snapped his collarbone without a second thought.
Start telling me where she is or I'll break it off.
He threw the man into the back of the pickup and drove off, and a woman nearby had seen every second of it. With the man as a guide, Rambo walked straight into the cartel's den. He didn't realize they'd already been tipped off and set up for him. Surrounded by over 100 armed men, Rambo could only stand there as they stripped everything off him. When Hugo flipped through the confiscated photos, Victor immediately recognized the girl. The moment Hugo found out why Rambo was there, he ordered his men to beat him. Dozens of men swarmed him. He was battered to within an inch of his life. Hugo picked up his business card and mocked him with a sneer. He wasn't going to kill Rambo. He wanted him to live with the guilt, to pay the price for overstepping, because Rambo showing up had only made things worse for Gabriella. To make sure he never forget this day of humiliation, Hugo had his men carve a mark into his face. Not gonna lie, this scene was genuinely hard to watch. After it was all done, they dumped Rambo in the street and left him to die. And as punishment, the same mark was carved into Gabriella's face too. What these men didn't know was that someone had quietly pulled him back from the edge. It was the same woman who'd been watching him at the bar, and leaving him alive was the biggest mistake this crew ever made. When Rambo came to, for full days, days had passed. The woman who saved him was a journalist named Carmen. She wasn't doing it out of any personal feelings for the old man. She'd been investigating the trafficking ring undercover and had witnessed what happened. Her own sister had also been taken by these people. At Rambo's insistence, Carmen finally gave him what he needed on Hugo. The moment he had enough strength back, he tracked down one of their hideouts. He went in disguised as a customer. Then he picked up a hammer and got to work. No hesitation, no words. Just the hollow thud of impact, one after another. Anyone in that place, even the ones just there as customers, couldn't escape his fury. And in the very last room, he finally found her. Gabriella was barely recognizable. Hollow eyes, savage wounds across her face, and rows of track marks up her arms. All of it spoke without a word about what she'd been through. How could any father take that in without breaking? Rambo swallowed his grief, picked her up, and carried her out of that hellhole. He didn't stop, just drove straight home. Gabriella gradually began to calm down.
You came back.
We're gonna get you back. Get you back home.
But she had been broken, body and soul, past the point of no return. Rambo slipped the bracelet back onto her wrist, and in that moment, Gabriella's tears finally came. But she couldn't hold on. Rambo watched his daughter take her last breath right in front of him. The rage that had been buried for decades swallowed him whole. His last reason to stay in this world was gone, and that meant Rambo had nothing left to hold him back. What's coming for them is a revenge that burns straight up from hell. He headed back to Mexico and tracked down Carmen. Under relentless pressure, she finally gave up the location of the cartel's base. When night fell, Rambo went in alone. Covered by darkness, the revenge operation began. After clearing out a wave of guards, he didn't go after Hugo right away. Instead, he deliberately left a trail, a message, an invitation. The next day, Hugo came home to find Victor dead in his own bed. On the back of a photo, an address, bold as you like. Hugo couldn't let that slide for a second. He rallied every man he had, 40 soldiers, fully armed, 6 vehicles, and stormed toward that address. What none of them could have imagined was that the 70-year-old waiting for them wasn't some ordinary rancher. He was a special forces veteran who had actually survived the battlefield. The moment the convoy entered the farm, explosions erupted on all sides. Fire everywhere, except for one narrow gap in the middle, exactly where Rambo had planned for them to go. Hugo's crew was caught off guard, but they regrouped fast and fanned out to surround the house. 2 bold ones moved up front to check things out. The door swung open, and one dropped instantly, hit by a crossbow bolt. The other didn't make it either. Rambo emerged from the tunnel and took him out on the spot. Then Rambo vanished just as fast, leaving without a trace. Using the terrain to his advantage, he began hunting them down one by one. Hugo's men hadn't even pinpointed Rambo's position before they'd already lost a third of their crew. Hugo's face darkened. He led his men straight into the tunnel. They had no idea the real nightmare was only just beginning. The tunnel was a maze, branching in every direction, routes tangled on top of each other. They had to feel their way through, one passage at a time. But no matter how careful they were, none of them could escape Rambo's reckoning. After dropping one with a shot, Rambo picked up a heavy steel pipe and kept pushing. Then he turned on the music, pumping it through speakers rigged throughout the tunnel, disorienting them, splitting them apart, while he held position at the choke point and waited. Watching bodies pile up on the ground, Hugo finally understood just how dangerous this old man really was. But by then, it was way too late. Rambo pulled a cord. 3 more men were swallowed by the blast. The explosion drew 2 more in, and they walked straight into a trap. Even after the trap had already wrecked them, Rambo walked up and finished the job. In the chaos, Rambo took a bullet himself, but Hugo was the only one left standing, and this was always part of the plan. To keep Hugo from getting lost in the tunnel, Rambo actually called out to him, deliberately giving away his position. Hugo snapped, opened up with his submachine gun, and chased Rambo down hard. Rambo took another hit to the shoulder during the chase, but the whole reason he'd kept Hugo alive was to make him feel something, real fear.
They're all dead. All of them. I could have killed you 10 times, but I wanted you last. Fuck you. No, fuck you, dead man. I want you to feel my rage, my hate. When I reach into your chest and rip out your heart!
He yanked the breaker, lights on, bombs off. The entire tunnel was about to come down, and Hugo barely clawed his way out alive. But Rambo had said he'd finish this with his own hands, and he meant it. 4 arrows, fired one after another, each one driving through bone. The piece of trash was pinned to the wall, unable to move. Rambo walked toward him slowly, calm as ever. He reached for the combat knife, looking Hugo dead in the eyes as the man's terror set in. He always kept his word, not just to honor a promise, but to get justice for his daughter.
This is what it feels like.
Rambo drove the blade into Hugo's chest, then tore through whatever stood in the way. He reached inside, and pulled out the heart that was still beating.